No. I don't know, can it rotate? Yeah. No, I'm not so sure. Okay. As I took off running to the east, the first beams of sunlight peeked above the horizon, transforming the sky into a million shades of pink. Although I had been awake all night, I felt alert and energized as I ran in the thick woven wool dress and turquoise jewelry. My heavy necklace bounced against my chest as the chill air whipped my face, and my newly washed hair flew behind me. My moccasins fell light on my feet, despite being bound in huge layers of buckskin around my calves. As the sun began to rise higher, I started hearing the sounds of my friends and family running behind me in support. As I came to a stop on top of a tall rock ledge and looked out over the vast desert landscape, I felt different. I knew that when I returned back to everyone, I would be seen as an adult instead of the small middle schooler I was. Growing up, I visited my family on the reservation often, sitting quietly in small hogans and trailers, listening as my family babbled away in Navajo. "Yate, child," they would say as they shook my small little hands. They would sit and talk for hours, intermixing English and Navajo in words in each sentence. When I was lucky, I could escape out into the dry red dirt and play with my cousins until the stray dogs came around looking for food. We would wander down dusty dirt roads until we could look out across the edge of the mesa, or we would ride in the back of a pickup out to my parents' hogan that has a clear view of the San Francisco Peaks, one of the 4 sacred mountains. I was always the cousin from California, the one that didn't look native, the one with colored eyes and lighter hair. My skin wasn't as dark, and I either wasn't as tall or wasn't as round as the other kids. I hadn't lived in a trailer on the reservation my whole life, wasn't learning Navajo in school, and I hadn't grown up in the harsh desert climate. I was somewhat of an outsider, and although everyone knew I was different, I was still family, and had still grown up understanding the traditional beliefs. When I got older, everyone would ask my parents, "When will you have our canalda? Where will it be? You better start preparing now." Much like in the Jewish tradition, the Navajo perform a coming-of-age ceremony for girls when they reach puberty, but instead of one large service, the canalda is a few days long. I had been looking forward to mine for years, with nervousness and anticipation. The ceremony would transition me into adulthood and demonstrate my strength in front of an entire community. In some ways, I was surprised at how many people wanted to help me into this new stage of my life. From the cooking to the night-long prayers, every member of my family was involved. Family friends from around the country who had seen me grow up came, and even people I had never met were there to support me and celebrate the traditional and ancient ceremony that would bring another Dene woman into the community. All these people stayed up with me throughout the nights of long prayers, and they spent the days keeping me awake and giving me advice. The medicine man and his wife sat with me for hours during the day, talking about my new responsibilities as a woman and how to respect myself and others, and how to continue to work hard in everything I do to make an impact on the world. For an entire day, I sat in the sweltering hogan, grinding corn with a grinding stone for the el-cod, which is a large cake baked during the last part of the ceremony. The circular cake, which spanned a few feet in diameter, was placed in the ground lined by corn husks and buried. A large fire was built on top and tended to throughout the night by my Uncle Roy, my brother, and other male family members. While I grinded corn, a sheep was slaughtered and traditionally skinned by the woman to prepare for a large meal for the next day. I took a break and watched in astonishment as my grandma dug through a large bowl of sheep intestines, preparing a traditional dish of intestines coiled around strips of fat and then grilled. In addition to the cake preparation, I was required to run in the 4 directions at dawn, noon, and dusk to show my endurance and strength. This ceremony was grueling, and when I wasn't working on grinding corn or running, I was struggling to stay awake from being up all night in prayer. The warmth and support that surrounded me was amazing. "You're doing great," everyone said. "If only your father was here, he would be so proud to see you doing this," my tiny frail grandmother said to me one morning. I knew that although he wasn't there to support me physically, he was thinking about me and staying up all night in prayer as well. Coming into the ceremony, I was still a girl who loved her culture and was eager to be brought into the world as a young woman in such a special and spiritual way. The story of Changing Woman, the daughter of first man and first woman, had been told to me as a young child and depicts the first Canalda. She created a plan for the earth, and from her skin she created the 4 initial clans, one of which, Totocini, or Bitter Water Clan, is mine. Just like Changing Woman, I ran for the last time, starting before the sun had risen on the last day. My hair had been freshly washed with yucca root and tied back by my mother as the fire above the corn cake died down outside. A lot relied on the cake. A good cake meant a good future, cooked all the way through without any burns. When I returned from the run, the sun had risen all the way, and even more people had arrived for the end of the ceremony. Seeing all the people standing around waiting for me was intimidating. But I knew I now possessed the strength to push past my shyness and be introduced to my community. They had all come to be blessed, not by the medicine man, but by me. In the Navajo culture, women are the leaders and are sacred for their ability to bear children and to nurture. When people hear about a Canalda taking place, they come from all around to be blessed by the new woman. As over 100 people formed a line, I laid down on a rug outside, and my closest female family members began to touch my arms and legs, symbolically molding me into a woman. After, each person approached and asked me to bless and mold them. Many asked me to touch their back to heal pain, or their heads to clear their minds of any bad thoughts. Although it felt strange to be seen as a healer, the feelings of maturity began to come to me. I was now the center of attention and the focus of everyone's prayers in a community that I was only able to visit a couple times a year and had often felt separate from. Often, I had felt like I couldn't relate to my cousins or other women in my family because I had not grown up the same way as them and hadn't lived in an entire community of Native peoples my whole life. I had always been proud of my heritage and was grateful that I had been able to experience traditional ceremonies since childhood, but I had never felt so accepted by my community until then. As the ceremony ended and the women in my family greeted me, I realized I had been accepted and initiated into a strong group of strong and spiritual women who understood the significance of the traditional ways and teachings and who would continue to teach me the ways of my people.
Questions or feedback for Changing Woman? Kimberly. I wanted to ask if you don't mind, how do I frame this? You may not be the only, but you're certainly in a small group in terms of CU freshmen who have blessed people. And I'm just curious about how you transition with that. You know what I mean? With that level of authority and fullness that you speak of, and belonging and power, to suddenly, I'm a freshman away from home, and you know what I mean? I don't know if you have any reflections on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it made me more of an independent person, being able to stand on my own. Like, my father's a medicine man, and so like in traditional ceremonies, I was kind of always behind my parents, like always running around. And then once I got older, I was able to kind of like be my own person and not be like my father's daughter, like my grandfather's like granddaughter and stuff like that. So that was important.